All right. Let's do a little stinger right off the top here.
Let's.
Okay, ready?
That sounds awesome.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds cool.
Why don't you shut up and let me do the stinger? Okay. Hey guys, welcome to Mic It Up. In our last episode, we gave you. Hey guys, it's my. Gosh. This is like a mattress review.
It is.
Okay. Hey guys, welcome to Mic It Up.
Hey guys.
Hey guys. Hey guys.
Maybe we should invent a new hello. Every video on the internet starts with "Hey guys."
Yeah.
I think we should come up with our own. Anyway, go with "Hey guys" for now.
Hey you guys.
Nobody knows what that means anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's something from the 1900s. Okay. Hey guys, welcome to Mic It Up. In our last episode, we made the case for why we think the mattress industry needs to revisit its approach to return policies. In this episode, we're going to give you our thoughts on what some more sustainable approaches might be. Stick around. Stuck the landing on that for show. Faux show. Faux show.
Welcome to Mic It Up with GoodBed.com's Jeff Cassidy.
So when that's the case, it becomes harder just psychologically to make a change.
And Mike Magnuson.
If you're doing those things, you can be competitive long term.
Just when you thought these number-crunching data lovers couldn't get any nerdier, they started a podcast.
And I know this is pretty controversial, but this is why we're having a podcast, right?
But if you want to be smart about how the mattress shopping journey is changing and what retailers and manufacturers should be doing about it, well then, man, have you ever found your people? Because right now, it's time to mic it up.
Okay, here we are. The last episode of season 1. What a journey this has been.
It's been something. It's been quite something.
It really has been something that is not other things.
Anyway, it has been much more fun than I anticipated. I'm not gonna lie.
The last word you could have thought of when you were presented with being on a phone call with me for hours on end was that it could be fun.
Well, yeah.
You didn't say it's been fun, actually. I should be clear. You just said it's been less not fun than
I said
anticipated.
More fun than I anticipated. I did not say.
Yeah, I heard less not fun.
How much? I did not say how much fun I actually had anticipated.
Right.
Fun expectation also it can go negative. Just like on the chart.
I'm well aware. That's why
right,
I heard it the way I did. Yeah. All right, well, so in this week's episode, we wanted to dive into some solutions. And just to recap, for those of you who missed the last episode, I keep saying this week's episode, but it's not like these are going to be released weekly necessarily. So we don't know. I mean, we're recording this one right after we finished the last one, so
yeah. only
about 12 minutes have passed since the last episode.
In this next 2-hour blocks episode.
Yeah, we hope you guys are still on board with these 45-minute snacks of information. Because that's what we seem to be capable of creating, and only that. So we laid out the case for why we think there's a need for change, that there's kind of an impending day coming where a day of reckoning for the industry when the public wakes up to the fact that a lot of extra mattresses are ending up in landfills that kind of didn't need to, because of the return policies being what they were, and because there really are not good outlets for these mattresses. And we talked about how landfills is obviously a bad option. The donation ecosystem is a good option, but it's saturated. The recycling ecosystem is a good option, although not as good as not having made the mattress in the first place. But it's a good option, but it's nowhere near capable of absorbing all the mattresses that are out there at this point, when you think about it from a nationwide standpoint. One thing we didn't talk about, but is worth at least mentioning, is that kind of a secondary market for mattresses does exist. I mean, Craigslist it's basically Craigslist is the, and that's fraught with issues as well, right? Because you've got abuse from the consumer side. Like you got abuse in the sense that customers are selling skanky mattresses. That's bad. So it's a bad experience for buyers. It's also bad for sellers of mattresses, companies that make and sell them, because you got people essentially abusing the return policy and then actually turning around and selling the product. So there's leakage in the model.
Leakage and cannibalization of somebody who could have bought it at full price otherwise.
That's right. And third, there's that's fundamental. Even if the first two problems were fixed, you'd still have that problem, which is that any kind of secondary market cannibalizes primary sales of mattresses. So that isn't really an ideal solution. So really, it comes back to this idea that the industry needs to kind of come together and put some thought into what is a more sustainable return policy. The term I like to use is, what would be a utopian return policy? And as I think about what a utopian return policy would be for this industry, I kind of come at it from a few standpoints. There's the consumer friendliness, there's the environmental cost, there's the cost to other consumers that you want to factor in, because obviously anything that has cost is ultimately going to get passed on to consumers. So there's a lot of factors. There's friction you want to factor into this. You also want to make sure you take into account business considerations, such as the fact that return policies being more friendly has certainly been something that has enabled sales to happen. So giving people comfort making a purchase. So you don't want to lose that either. So I think about it as, if I boil it down, I'm looking for a utopian return policy. I'm looking for one where both sides, really buyer and seller, have skin in the game. That's kind of the thing. So like in the old system, when you had a $300 return fee plus 15% restocking, plus you could only exchange it for something else in the store, like all these limitations, that was so consumer unfriendly that it really didn't necessarily put skin in the game for the retailer, because the retailer had no incentive to really make sure the consumer had the right mattress the first time. They could just sell them something and be like, well, they're not going to return it. As soon as I get them to say yes, like they walk out the door, I got their credit card, we're done here. That sale's never coming back. So they have no skin in the game in terms of making sure that the purchase was the right purchase the first time.
Yeah, and even the retailers who really they tried their best and they really wanted to find the right match for somebody, the fact that the return policy was like that contributed to the impression that the mattress experience was not customer friendly. So it contributed to that atmosphere, that customer perception, that customer frustration that opened the door, the opportunity for the online.
And a lot of consumer anxiety resulted from that too.
Yeah.
So that was bad. So that's what I mean by skin in the game, is that both sides need to be invested in making sure that they're making the right choice the first time, making sure the consumer makes the right choice the first time. So in that old system, I feel like businesses didn't have enough skin in the game. In the current system, I can for sure say consumers don't really have enough skin in the game. I mean, they've got a little bit of cost. There is real cost to the hassle of making a return. But that's about it. And frankly, that's not much of a deterrent, because a lot of people don't even realize that there is that cost until they go to try to make the return. So we try to educate people on the fact that is a real cost, but it requires us telling them that. They don't intuitively know it. So they don't have enough skin in the game to make sure they're making the right purchase the first time, and therefore you end up with this abuse that we talked about in the past. So like, there's three kinds of abuse. The worst kind would be like the serial returner, which thankfully we haven't seen a whole lot of. But the next kind that we definitely have seen people do is buying 3 or 4 mattresses in order to pick the one that they like the best, which is just abuse, plain and simple. And then the most common form of abuse is just the kind of lazy shopper. The one who's going to basically use the return policy as a crutch and as a substitute for actually doing their homework and actually trying to figure out the first time whether this mattress would be good for them. And so that's a very common form of abuse. So that's really the form that I think we're most trying to tackle because it's the most common. But obviously, anything that gives the consumer skin in the game inherently tackles all of those potential forms of abuse. So that's where I come to it. Is the answer is going to be somewhere in between where we are now and where we came from. But it's got to because those are the two polar extremes where kind of neither side had enough skin in the game, and we want to meet somewhere in the middle where both sides have skin in the game. And kind of the just to cut to it, like what we had talked about was an idea where maybe there's like a 10% return fee with a minimum of $100 would be sort of a cost. That seems to me to be a level where if you needed the confidence to know that you could return it if you need to, then you probably would still feel comfortable buying it. Like, okay, worst case scenario, I'm out the 10%. But it definitely makes you think.
Right.
You're not going to just jump in there with both feet willy-nilly when you know that you'd be out 10% if you're wrong.
Right. It's worth $100 to most people to then think more about finding the right fit
up front. Yeah. So it gives
right.
you the comfort and the protection for those who have the best intentions and just end up not making the right choice. But it doesn't. But it makes you think enough to put the work in up front. And so I feel like, and from a business's standpoint, it should cost the business a little bit of money. Like, they should be incentivized to make sure that they are really trying to make you get someone to make the right choice the first time. And obviously they're still, even though they're recouping 10% or $100, that's not going to at all cover the cost of making the mattress, shipping it out, all of which, especially in the case of an online mattress, or I should say at least in the case of an online mattress, are sunk costs. Those are not recouped at all. So, and in fact, sometimes there's even additional cost to have someone go pick it up from the consumer. So they're still out money. They still have an incentive in that respect to make sure that the consumer bought the right product, and did it the first time. So I feel like that to me is
out much less, which is good because
they recoup a little bit.
They get the 100, but they also would benefit of if people do a little bit more of the work up front to find the right one. That would also reduce the return rate. So they would reduce the rate and get $100. So they kind of benefit from both sides. Yet the $100 is not so much that it makes me frustrated as a consumer that this is totally unfair. So it seems like you said, it seems reasonable, and it makes me want to find the right one.
Yeah. I think that to me is like a nice middle ground. Now, I throw that out there to the industry and say, this is our thought. Like, let's discuss, and that said, how you get to that becomes a real kind of prisoner's dilemma type of question, because I don't see a way without some kind of collective action, some formal or informal collective action that you do get to that. It's just the kind of thing where if one person removes free returns and switches to this, it's just too easy. It's too fragmented. No one has enough market power on their own to basically say, yeah, we're doing this, and not lose share or risk or feel a viable concern about losing share due to other people pouncing on that and trying to turn that into an opportunity for them.
Right. It's kind of like this is not necessarily the best example, but airlines colluding to raise prices. So one airline wants to raise the price, but if they raise the price and nobody else does, then their purchases, the number of passengers they get, goes way down.
Right.
So they want to, they're not allowed to, but they want to collude in order for it to become more profitable for everybody.
But in that case, it's something that's obviously not good for consumers, paying higher prices, and that's why collusion is not allowed by the government, so that to protect consumers. Here, it's a little bit of a tricky thing because collusion is not allowed for that reason. However, this arguably is something that is beneficial really for society, and even for consumers, I would argue, because of the fact that essentially consumers are paying for other people's returns right now. This would lower the overall number of returns and should ultimately keep costs lower in a competitive marketplace. This should keep costs lower for consumers than in a marketplace where there's a lot more aggregate costs being built into everybody's prices for returns. So this is a weird situation where collusion could actually be beneficial to the consumer.
Right. But also, to a point you mentioned, it's a societal cost of the returns and the environmental impact. That's a cost to society.
That's true.
And there's this huge externality of who's bearing the ultimate cost of that. But no matter what, it's a cost to society. So it's better for society for that return number to be lower.
Better for the planet. Given this kind of prisoner's dilemma dynamic here, I kind of feel like there needs to be some kind of collective action. Obviously, it needs to be done outside of running afoul of any kind of collusion type concerns. And maybe one idea for that would be for there to become some kind of a public education effort attached to this that basically maybe also encompasses a certification of some kind. Something that says like a stamp of Utopian return policy approved. Like this is, we're doing something that sort of you can certify and say like, hey, we are taking this action where we do the right thing. And consumers can see that and recognize that, oh yeah, like this doesn't seem as friendly, but there's a bigger purpose here that they can then read about and maybe even see in the press, and that can make them feel better about the rationale behind that. And it also can disincentivize other people from trying to capitalize on it, because then they look like bad guys for trying to denigrate their competitor for abiding by this policy, this practice.
Right. I think it goes hand in hand with the education piece around the environmental problem. So that's something that these days more consumers, in theory, appreciate. So things like a mattress certification, you see that promoted on websites, and that's promoted there because it's a value to the shopper. But they're not understanding the negative environmental impact. So I think part of that education that you're talking about, if that can be around the environmental impact and that being a driver of this return policy, then it can kind of go hand in hand with, we have all of these certifications and seals of approval, and that's why we're doing this policy, which ties in to, it makes sense with our strategy of trying to be environmentally conscious and minimize our footprint as a company.
Yeah. I mean, there have to be other examples from other industries where people kind of agree to a set of practices that maybe consumers recognize adds cost, or in some ways adds some encumbrances to them that are not as convenient, for example, but that they're doing it with this bigger objective in mind, this bigger societal objective or collective outcome in mind. And then there's some certification that they use to kind of put that out there that helps kind of unify companies and their efforts in this regard. Something I think there's got to be analogs from other industries that we can draw from, but that to me seems like it should be something like that. Probably has to be part of this in order to get the kind of collective adoption of this that's needed. It's worth noting that there's been some other models discussed. I mean, for example, and even tried. For example,
there's one that's still available.
Yeah,
it's Nola. So I don't know. I don't have any data on how it's doing. But with Nola, which is one of the online brands, the consumer has the choice. They can pay whatever the regular price is, or they can choose an option with no return. So eliminate the return policy and you save $100.
Right.
So that's the first one that I have seen that's trying that. It would be really interesting to know what percentage of consumers are taking that option.
Jet.com was a company founded by the Diapers.com team and ultimately acquired by Walmart.com. I think they're now some of the ones running the Walmart.com operations now. But their premise in trying to insert themselves into an e-commerce landscape that was already well on its way to being dominated by Amazon and Walmart at the time was to incorporate stuff like this, like incorporate data and very like differentiated pricing and things like this, where consumers could opt in to say, okay, I want no return policy and therefore I'll get this discount. Almost the way like you buy an airline seat now. Like, do you want like 3 inches of legroom or 4? It's like you're piecemealing everything.
Yeah.
Upgrade for this, upgrade for a working headphone jack.
Do you want fights to be allowed on the plane or not?
So there is precedent for it from them. When they got acquired by Walmart, I think all that stuff went out the window. So I don't know how much success they had with it either. Personally, I'd rather see that model implemented the other way around, where you actually pay to have a return policy. Like, for example, if you did the way where we're recommending the 10% or $100 minimum, then you could pay a little extra up front to have a free returns.
That's
like
interesting. Yeah,
$50, $75, something. It probably has to be less than the 10%, obviously, or else you wouldn't do it. But like something less than that in order to give yourself the comfort of having free returns. I'd prefer to see it implemented that way, but nonetheless, it's interesting that people are trying it. And by the way, the other way that we've seen out there is something that Luxy has done. David Farley has been vocal on this topic of returns, and he's tried to put forth a return policy that works more like you pay $100 when you
it's like
buy
a deposit.
The mattress. It's like a deposit.
Yeah.
And then you just don't get that back if you return it or something like that. So he's also been experimenting with other possible ways around this. And I can't speak to the outcomes of that either. But just thought it was worth mentioning a couple other possibilities. But we still kind of like this 10%, $100 minimum range the best. It's simple to understand. It's fairly close to how it works now. It's just, I mean, structurally, it's just adding this one return cost, and people are familiar with return costs in other purchases they've made, so it's not completely unfamiliar structure. So I think it checks a lot of boxes in that respect. The other thing I thought about on this front was if there could be some way to make the returned mattresses more valuable, to basically make it so that they're not totally wasted, right? And they're not viewed. They're not going into some secondary market where they're going to be massively devalued because of the fact that you have kind of an agency problem of like who knows what has happened to this mattress between the time it was unwrapped and the time I'm buying it. But if you could eliminate that, then maybe you could have mattresses that aren't super cannibalizing because they're not sold at a massive discount. They're only sold at a slight discount because they've been barely used essentially, and you can be assured that they're clean. So kind of like the pre-owned model of cars in a sense. And the only way to do that is if you could come up with some kind of a 360 degree encasement that you could put around the mattress that essentially it's got to be waterproof, odor-proof, bed-bug proof. It's got to protect against all that stuff. But it's also got to be somehow not affecting the feel, so that consumers can actually really try the bed and get a real sense of it. And then I'm thinking it could be the kind of thing. Have you ever been to a concert in the last few years where the artist doesn't want their concert to be recorded, and they make you put your cell phones in a bag, So they don't take your cell phones. They give you this bag, and it's like a cloth bag, I think, like a canvasy kind of thick cloth, and it's got this magnetic seal on it. So you can't use your phone. You have it. You still have it in your possession, so you're not worried you're gonna forget it or someone's gonna steal it or anything like that. But you can't use it. And the way it works is that if you break that seal, they'll know that you did that. And when their concert is over, they unlock it for you, essentially. And they do it through some, like, I can't remember if they do it through some app or like an RFID thing. But they unlock it for you. And so then when you leave, essentially, you're taking it out of the bag and you're off back to your real life. So I kind of was thinking, what if there was a way to make this 360-degree encasement sealed in a similar way that could even be unlocked, that magnet could be unlocked remotely, and any tampering could be detected remotely, and such that when, let's say, the return period ends, then the consumer could say, okay, like we want to keep the mattress, and then at that point in time, the company, or for that matter, they don't have to wait till the return policy ends. But by telling the company that they're ready to remove this thing, they would be essentially ending their return policy. And the company would remotely unlock that magnetic strip. They'd be able to remove this thing and, I guess, return it to the company or something. I don't know what would happen with that exactly, but it was just another possible idea for how could you, because in that situation, if they did decide they wanted to return it, the company could pick it up and essentially it's been fully protected. And the only sense in which it's not a new mattress is the sense that somebody has slept on it and therefore, like, compressed those materials for however many nights. But that is not really that big of a deal. I mean, we've all slept on hotel mattresses and now thought twice about that, and those haven't been protected nearly to that degree.
Yeah.
Not even close.
It's just we choose not to think about.
We choose not to think about it, but even still, we sleep on a friend's house. It's really the thing that grosses us out is if we think about like fluids or whatever, like bed bugs, things like that. That's what grosses us out. But if you could be assured with 100% confidence that none of that could be in play here, if it's all the fact, it's just a matter of the fact that somebody else has lied on this mattress, then I think that really doesn't decrease the value of that mattress that much. I think for a 20-25% discount, that could still be a viable thing that you could sell.
Well, the other way to do it would be with there's no bag. There's a very interesting idea, by the way. And I thought you were going to say, and I just so happen to have invented this thing, and it's in my garage, and I'm selling it for $199. The other way would be through an entity that certifies it runs the existing mattress that gets returned through a set of checks that check for all those things. So they're going to vouch for the fact that it has no bed bugs. They're going to vouch for the fact that it has no stains. They luminol it so that there's no blood, whatever. And you get that certification so the consumer they trust that mattress because it's been certified by XYZ.
Yeah.
And in the auto industry, that would be whatever
the dealer
does, and they call it a whatever point inspection or whatever. And they have Carfax. Like Carfax was trying to get the history of a car so you can know, did something bad happen before? Did they change the frame and this frame's going to break, whatever. Maybe that entity, if it's independent, could also know when that mattress was sold and know how long it had been used. Yeah. So the consumer could say, oh, it was only used for 1 week. Great. Or it was used for 99 days. That's worth less to me.
One difference, though, in the car model versus the mattress model is that in the car model, things that are broken or dirty, they can generally clean or fix a little bit more easily than, if a mattress, the skis factor can't be removed from a mattress even if they do clean it. There's just a
those would go to whatever the recycling or to some other
so there'd be, unlike the cars, you'd have a big portion of the mattresses that come into that center that they get rejected. And so you'd have the cost of running that center, and then you have the cost of just all the mattresses that don't pass the inspection. So it seems like it would be better if you could come up with a solution that just ensured at least that 100% could be resold and avoid the infrastructure. You'd have the cost of this device that you'd have to put around it, but hopefully you could get that back. But you wouldn't have any overall infrastructure of testing and refurbing and doing that whatever point inspection. So I don't know. Those are some other ideas, but again, that's something that's a little bit more conceptual. Whereas this 10% $100 policy is something that we could implement tomorrow if we just had the right kind of solution for how we could properly incentivize companies to adopt it. And again, I think that comes back to some kind of collective education / certification effort. But that's where, again, I think we would love to be part of that. I think we could be a neutral third party that has credibility, that could ultimately help put our brand and our expertise behind that certification, that sort of education process as well, and say, hey, this is what we think is best. We can speak on behalf of both the industry as well as consumers. We actually, I really fundamentally believe this is a win for consumers, even though at face value, some people might not see it that way. But I can help, I think, bridge that gap and make that case. So we'd certainly be game to be part of that solution. And so we would invite people to reach out to us who feel, one of the great things about this podcast, we hope, is, we fly our flag, and we hopefully we find our people through this, and people come to us and say, yeah, this is something we agree with as well. And so
and even if you maybe don't have as much interest, a listener doesn't have much interest in the return policy idea in and of itself, maybe have an interest in the environmental impact and educating consumers about that, we would also encourage you, reach out to us. That's, as Mike mentioned at the start of this, that's something that's very important to us and very troubling for us just as humans, Mike and myself. And so that's something, if we can help educate on the environmental side, we absolutely want to do that. And that's something that I think people in the industry coming together to try and tell that story together would be great.
Cool. So there you go, guys. We welcome discussion on this topic, and we look forward to being part of that. So with that, I feel like this could be season 1 coming to a close here. It's bittersweet.
I think so. Bittersweet.
And to
sweet.
think,
it's just sweet.
To think not long ago we didn't even have a podcast, and now both of our moms have listened to us talk for many, many hours at this point. We've already completely failed on our admission to keep this content snack size, or at least as we define snack size. We just totally set ourselves up for failure. 15 minutes is what we said.
I do eat a lot though, so snack.
That's true.
I need a lot of food for it to be a snack. We gotta hit like 2 hours for it to be a meal. Let's not hit 2 hours.
Let's not open even that possibility. I think we should continue to aim for 10 to 15 minutes, and we're going to continue to come up around 45 if history is any guide.
And let the record show that when this concept was discussed, the talk was, all right, let's do 10 minutes.
Yeah,
we don't even do an intro in 10 minutes.
Yeah. or for that matter, a sign off.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
So here we go. With that said, we should sign this off, and thank you all for listening. Whoever you are, if you are listening, anyone. But we do appreciate it, and we welcome you. Please subscribe. And give us your feedback. Leave us a review. It helps other people discover the podcast, and also we'd love to know what you like about it and what you'd like to see more of. So,
suggestions on how to improve and suggestions for topics.
Yeah, we look forward to doing more of these and to connecting with all of you guys. So thank you again, and
thank you.
Until next time, we're out.